Hi everyone! Today we're going to dissect a California market squid, checking out both the external and internal anatomy. This is in the Loligo genus. So squid are part of the mollusk phylum, and that includes other organisms like octopus and clams and snails and sea slugs, nautilus. It also includes the squid. These guys are in the class Cephalopoda, which literally means head foot. And their body plan, as you can see, kind of resembles a head and a foot attached. So first, let's check out the external anatomy. So this main part of the body up here towards the top end of our squid, this is the mantle. This is what you would cut into nice rings if you were going to make calamari. For the squid, it covers all their major internal organs. And the outside of the mantle that we can see here is covered with chromatophores. So these tiny little dots you can see all over are special pigmented color-changing cells. And when the squid is alive, in an instant it can change from being this kind of whitish color to more reddish, depending on the type of squid. Some of them make zebra stripe patterns, and that's just by expanding or contracting those cells to expose different pigments. So now that it's dead, if I were to rub my finger back and forth and kind of expand those cells, you can see it's already getting a little more red. There's more spots that are appearing, especially if you check out the backside now that I've rubbed it on the tray. There's a lot more spots as it rubs against the tray here. But those color-changing cells can be used for camouflage. It can be used to attract mates, for defense, and it's also a way they can communicate. In the firefly squid, instead of these chromatophores, they have photophores, which makes light, so they bioluminesce. So for just looking at the external anatomy of our squid here, the way I have it laid out, you can see our fins up here at the top, and those are used to steer and help maintain balance for the squid as it moves through the water. At the opposite end of our squid down here at the bottom, you can see we've got a lot of external features. These two longer appendages are the tentacles, and if you look really closely, they kind of end in this little club shape, and there are only suction cups there at the very end of the tentacles. These are to reach out and grab or to strike and capture their prey. Then they would move them into their arms here, so they've got those two long tentacles, and then like an octopus, they've got 8 arms. You can see the arms are covered up and down with those suction cups. That's to really handle the food, pull it to their mouth. Right in the middle of all those arms are the mouth, which we'll look at a little more closely in a little bit. Other things to note on our squid, you can see the funnel here under the mantle. If I stick my probe in here, you can see it's actually a funnel that has a smaller opening at the end closer to the tentacles and the arms and the eyes. There's a larger opening that connects to underneath the mantle, inside the mantle cavity here. And that siphon is how our squid propels itself through the water. So when it's in the water is brought into the mantle, and then it's shot out through the siphon, and that causes the squid to move in a jet propulsion-like motion through the water. The siphon is also how waste exits the squid, and it's also how gametes, those eggs or sperm, are expelled from the squid. Right below the siphon, you can see our eyes of the squid. So squid have really well-developed eyes, pretty cool to look at. And just like our eyes, they have a hard structure inside. So I'm going to go ahead and cut an eye open, and you'll see that ink comes out of the eye. That's not the ink that it uses for defense, but it's kind of like it has natural sunglasses. It helps protect it. And in the center of this eye, just like in the middle of our eyes, there is a hard structure. And it looks like a tiny little pearl. Hopefully you guys can see that little tiny pearl there. That is actually the lens. So if you think about why people wear contact lenses, their vision might not be perfect. Things appear to be a little more blurry. The lens helps focus the light in order to see a clear image, and the lens of a squid and of other ocean creatures are spherical. They're a nice round shape, and that helps them see clearly underwater. If you think about what it looks like when you go into a swimming pool and you dive underwater and open your eyes, everything looks a little blurry. Our lens is actually shaped like an oval, and that allows us to see clearly in the air. So we have a different shaped lens depending on where we live. If you put on goggles and you keep a little airspace between your eye and the water, you can see clearly again because your eye is made to see clearly. So again, if we open up all the arms, sometimes I say you can kind of hold the squid like a ice cream cone here. Right in the middle of all of those arms, you can see again all those suction cups covering them, is where we have the mouth of our squid. And I'm going to go ahead and pull the mouth out of our squid here. Grab onto it. Alright. So if you check out our mouth, this long tube was attached to it. That's going to be the esophagus, so that connects our mouth down to the stomach of the squid, or I guess you could also say up to the stomach of the squid. This soft tissue around the mouth is called the buccal mass, so that's that muscular ring that surrounds the beak of our squid, and oftentimes you'll hear the mouth of a squid called a beak, and that's because these hard parts inside really do look like the beak of a parrot or a bird. This is made of chitin, so it's a little tougher. Go ahead and pull that out there. So here's half of the beak. Got the top half of it out. So you can see here we've got that part of the beak from our squid, other parts still inside of here. That beak, here's the second half, can be used to tear apart small fish. So often these guys are going to be eating small fish. They'll grab them with those tentacles, hold them with the arms, and then that beak can rip off small pieces for it to swallow down. So let's move on to the internal. So again, this mantle structure is protecting most of our internal organs. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Notice I have my fins lying flat on the tray. I'm going to pull up the mantle as I cut, so hopefully I don't damage any of the internal organs. So you can cut it all the way up to the very top of the squid. There we go. So a couple things you might notice right away. A lot of times when my students open this up, they are like, oh my gosh, it ate a fish. Look at that silvery fish. So this silvery black thing is actually, it's not a fish, that is the ink sac of our squid, and we're going to open that up later and check out the ink. You can see it leads down towards the siphon, and there's a tiny opening down here so it can eject ink out of the siphon in order to defend itself. Again, we've got our siphon here, so all these internal organs can release things through that siphon. So on either side of our squid, some of our bigger structures here, these are the gills, and if you look closely, they're actually quite feathery, and those are, of course, for extracting oxygen out of the water. They've got that feathery structure to give them more surface area to allow for greater gas exchange. And at the end of each gill, might be pretty hard to see here, but the cardiac system of our squid is actually composed of 3 hearts. So there's 2 smaller brachial hearts that are on either side of the gills, and those are to pump blood to and from the gills. So they're able to get that oxygen blood from the gills, and then they pump blood full of oxygen from the gills to the systemic heart, which is right here in the middle, and then that systemic heart is what pumps blood to the rest of the body cells. So they've actually got 3 hearts, part of that cardiac system. Other main things we should check out here is the reproductive system of our squid. So up here towards the top is where you're going to find different reproductive organs. And this is actually the testes of our squid. This is a male, and I'll show you a female so you can see the difference. But up here, easiest way to tell is looking up here at the top. If it's a milky white color, that's going to be a male squid. So this is where sperm is produced and stored until it is released through the siphon, through a couple of different tubes down there to fertilize the eggs in the female. So we've got a male squid here, and of course here is a female squid, so you guys can see the differences between a male and a female. And it's actually pretty easy to tell the difference. So if you remember before with our male, it was white up here at the top. here is the ovary of our female up here at the top, and you can see it's kind of a yellowish color like Vaseline. So this is actually a female that's full of eggs, and I'll zoom in on those so you can see them in a second. The other part that makes it really clear that it's a female are these two white finger appendages down here at the bottom. So you can see I can separate them a little bit. But there's these two white sacs that kind of look like fingers, and these are the nidamental glands. So the female, after she is ready to produce her eggs, she'll actually put those eggs through the nidamental glands, and those harden the eggs, so it's harder for predators to eat them. It also makes them kind of stinky and smelly, so the squid is able to better survive and reproduce. So that's our female here. And if we look at the eggs, I'm going to go ahead and cut this open. Get some of these eggs out. So if I zoom in here, you can see that the ovary is indeed full of eggs. This female did not have a chance to reproduce before she was caught and captured, but definitely female for this yellowish color up here, Vaseline-like, and then the nidamental glands. One last really cool part of our squid is if you look behind the main body of our squid, I'm going to go ahead and just pull these internal organs up and off. Set them to the side. So on our mantle, again, this is what people will cut into calamari and stuff. It almost looks like a piece of plastic inside of our squid. So this is not plastic. This is called the pen, and it's made of chitin, and it has this kind of feathery-like shape to it. And this is homologous to shells of bivalves like clams or gastropods like snails. So to remind you guys, this is a mollusk, and this is all that's left of the shell. So a squid has evolved over time and no longer has a shell. This pen is what supports the structure of our squid. So you can see that it is barely a shell, but that's part of what makes it a mollusk. And if I cut open my ink sac right here, what do you do with a pen, of course, is write with it. So I can, this is not what the squid uses the pen for, but as a human, I'm going to grab some ink, and I can't write on my hand because I have gloves on, but I'll write on my arm. Give myself a little squid ink tattoo with our squid ink. Don't worry, it washes off with soap and water. So here's my initials with squid ink. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you were able to learn a little bit more about our California market squid today, and I'll see you next time.